All right, glad to have you back. In a move to transform Nigeria's electricity landscape, the Rural Electrification Agency have signed a comprehensive agreement with critical government agencies, private sector entities to accelerate electrification across the country. This marks a significant step towards delivering power to millions of Nigerians, particularly the underserved rural communities, following the recent Electricity Act 2023, which decentralized and liberalized Nigeria's electricity sector. Now, the CEO stated that the importance of coordinated approach to ensure efficient interventions, which by virtue of the act of the REA, the agency is required to develop Nigeria's electricity strategy and implementation plan, a bottom-up approach that will map each community infrastructure and integrate it into a national plan. Now, the MD also highlighted the security aspect of this initiative. One of the key drivers of electrification is to address security challenge in this country. But let's continue this conversation and understand it better. The Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer of the Rural Electrification Agency, Mr. Abar Aliyu, joins me live from our Abuja studios. Good afternoon, Mr. Aliyu, and thank you for joining Business Nigeria.
Thank you, Tolu. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I did a lot of research and I saw that you've signed a series of agreements. You've MOUs and all of that. Now, take us through some of this and what are the expected implications? Because what Nigerians want is power supply.
Thank you very much. Like you rightly know, recently the federal government has signed the Electrification Act of 2023. And if you go back to that Electrification Act, you realize significant changes in that act, one of which is the liberalization of the sector, the entire sector, giving opportunities to subnationals, private sector to participate in the entire value chain of the electricity. So if you still go back to the act, you realize that the act was very also clever in the sense that there is need to develop the National Electrification Strategy and Implementation Plan. And the reason being that when you liberalize the sector and have many people coming into that sector, there is need to make sure that there is a coordinated approach towards that creating this electrification in the country. And that is why the Act now mandated the Rural Electrification Agency to develop the National Electrification Strategy and Implementation Plan. The plan, it's going to be a bottom-up approach plan whereby we are going to map the entire communities across the country, take stock of where are the energized communities, where are those so-called underserved communities, and also take stock of the renewable resources within this community and the least cost approach to electrifying this community across the country. So in our own effort to make sure that we have this plan, the first thing we did is to also take stock of sign these MOUs with different subnationals and private sector. The Act also, by the virtue of the liberalization of the sector, created avenue for private sector to now play a significant role in the electrification of the country. The federal government made it very clear that to electrify the country, there is a significant role for private sector, there is need for private sector investment. So we signed a number of MOUs with this private sector for them to now commit to what they are bringing in terms of funding, where are the communities they want to offtake, and how do they intend to play a role in this electrification. So I give you an example. When we had a roundtable with the Katsina State government, we did the mapping of Katsina entirely, and we realized that based on this mapping, there are a number of about 850 mini-grid sites that can be developed within the state, which can provide electrification access to about 1.5 indigenous of Katsina State. So we brought the government entities, and we brought the private sector, the Renewable Energy Service Company, and we showcased these opportunities within the Katsina State, and we now asked them to see which of this site out of the 850 mini-grid site they can offtake to provide this electricity, and at the same time get grant and subsidy, capital subsidy based on our program. So this is part of, it's a deliberate strategic approach we are adopting, bringing in the subnational, bringing in the private sector, bringing in the financiers, and at the same time also bringing in the services company towards a common platform and channeling all their efforts towards electrifying the entire country. So that is why we signed these MOUs.
Interestingly, and talking very much about cleaner energy, I think that's more of the focus of the REA. Now, also, you're supposed to raise some particular funding, even from private sector. There's a seed capital of $750 million, if I'm correct. I think that's for one of your projects. And you're expecting to attract $1.1 billion, that's investment from the private sector. Can you tell us more about this? And the renewable energy service companies, tell us more about this initiative and what it intends to achieve. It's a twin one.
Yeah, so the first to speak about our initiative is called the Distributed Access Through Renewable Energy Scale-Up, which is the biggest public sector funded project, renewable project in the entire world. The government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu approved this funding, a concessionary funding from the World Bank. We use this funding to catalyze private sector investment into the renewable energy. And it's quite ambitious project whereby we plan to electrify 17.5 million Nigerians. 30 million of them, we plan to provide them with this electricity access using their isolated mini-grid. 1.5 million Nigerians to provide them with the access through interconnected mini-grids, and about 12 million Nigerians using standalone solar system and mesh grid. So this is the plan. Now for the RESCO, the Renewable Energy Service Company, it is our own drive, federal government drive, mandated by the Honorable Minister of Power to create a sustainable companies that will continue to harness private sector funding and address this electricity access gap, and at the same time benefiting from the federal government capital subsidy and grants. So the RESCOs is a new ecosystem being created who are going, we hope that in future they can serve as an alternative to distribution companies. So they are companies specialized in deployment of renewable energy that also specialize in accessing private sector funding, and also they are specialized in engaging with the communities to address the community's electricity access gap. So the DARE program, based on the ambitious nature of this program, we feel that there is need to now strengthen these developers into a sustainable company, and that is why we created the concept of the RESCO, Renewable Energy Service Company, for them to have much more sustainable and stronger internal process to harness both the federal government grant and also at the same time access the private sector funding. It is our estimate that the $750 million federal government funding will crystallize 1.1 billion private sector funding to provide this access to this over 17.5 million Nigerians. So it's creating financial access and at the same time also creating a structure of governance, a structure of technical capability, a structure of financial ability to harness private sector funding towards a common goal of addressing this electricity gap in the country.
Now, decentralization of the power sector, of course, and liberalizing the entire value chain, many players in the sector say it's a step in the right direction. How does this support your operations at the REA, and what more kind of support would you be needing from government, of course, your ministry and the presidency, to move on and activate this? Because these underserved communities, it remains very worrisome how soon they'll start to enjoy power supply, at least to a level.
Yeah, so the Electrification Act has really changed the dynamics in the entire electricity sector, and it's a bold move of this present government, and it's one of the greatest achievements that has been recorded. The Act has changed a number of things. One, it's deepening the private sector and subnational participation. So the federal government, under the leadership of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, feels that there is need to have a much more concerted effort by different parties towards addressing the electricity access challenge. So it's no more the federal government purview, for example, to invest in the transmission infrastructure. Now the subnational, the private sector can do. So one of the key changes brought in by the Electrification Act is the independent transmission network opportunity, which hitherto it was only the purview of the Transmission Company of Nigeria. The second is also the liberalization, giving the opportunity for the subnational to participate in the entire value chain, be it generation, transmission, distribution, metering, customer relation, and even other auxiliary services. So this is the second change. The third change is also the drive for renewable energy. Nigeria as a country has abundant renewable energy resources across the country. We have high solar irradiation, we have small, medium and large hydro opportunities, we have biomass potential, we have wind potential. So the Act also has provided this, created an opportunity for us to harness these renewable resources. And you see, the wisdom behind this is that harnessing renewable opportunities in Nigeria is a strategic move, being the fact that if you look at the number of Nigerians that are without electricity access, most of them are in the rural areas and they are sparsely populated. And another thing is that their demand is most often is very low, ranging between 50 kilowatt to 1 megawatt. Now, so imagine, why should a country move transmission line to these rural areas? It costs about $1.5 million to just build one transmission line. Why shouldn't we now take the approach of distributed renewable energy resources, that is taking the generation plant to these communities, building the distribution line, metering them and providing them with this renewable access. So this is the most economically efficient way of providing access to these rural communities. And secondly is also, we have these resources in abundance. Why shouldn't we tap into these resources? We have high solar irradiation, we have the wind and the biomass opportunities. Let's make use of it. Thirdly also is also to commit to the different commitment that the federal government has done. The COP28, the Paris Accord, where we also commit to reducing the carbon emission across the country. So based on this, the federal government, through the Act, also now deepen the opportunities for renewable energy to play a significant part in addressing the renewable challenge. The third is also around the Rural Electrification Agency to develop the National Electrification Strategy and Implementation Plan, which will serve as the national pathway for electrification. So it's no more going to be sitting at the national level and deciding what happens within the community. The Act now reverses, using that plan, reverses this process, whereby we go to this community, take stock of what is their level of electrification, take stock what are the renewable resources within this community, and defining the least cost of electrifying these communities, then aggregate it at the local government level and also aggregate it at the state level, then aggregating it at the national level to have the National Electrification Strategy and Implementation Plan. The plan to electrify the entire country using the least cost, taking stock of different peculiarities of communities, local government, and the state. And that is what this present government is doing. And we already have started this mapping. Another addition to it is also defining different critical sectoral plan. So we are going to have, for example, the National Education Electrification Plan, taking stock of the different educational institution infrastructure within the country and defining the best means of electrifying them. Also, the National Health Electrification Plan, as well as the National Health Agricultural Plan. And this is also based on the Honorable Minister's understanding that these three key sectors have critical dependencies on the, electrification, and that is why we are now mandated to focus on them and define a plan of electrifying this, which already we have started. If you are following the development in Rural Electrification Agency, you would see that just recently we have mentioned that we have completed project in 7 federal institutions, providing them with solar hybrid mini grid, one of which is here in Abuja. If you go to Abuja University, you will see a 3 megawatts power plant that has been deployed, which is serving the entire university, including the staff quarters and even some access gap. And this we completed in 7 universities and 2 teaching hospitals. And to show you also the foresightness of the present government, as we completed these 7 universities and 2 teaching hospitals, we already have now started another round of intervention in 8 universities and 1 teaching hospital. And also plans have started in looking at other remaining universities, which even as at this moment we are working in developing the concept and the project of that intervention. So this is what we are currently undertaking.
CEO, before I let you go, these are interesting strategies. Yes, let me use that word, set up. But let's give the timeline. What are your expectations? You've given us beautiful numbers now, talking about those that you intend to cover. So can we have a little timeline for some of them? Yes, I read about the university thing and you've talked about it. Interesting stuff. But what more should Nigerians expect from the REA as we move on?
Yeah. So very interesting question. One, the timeline, for example, for the 7 university and 2 teaching hospitals already completed. We are about to commission it. The 8 universities and 1 teaching hospital, the project has already started. We are to complete the entire 8 universities and 1 teaching hospital by the middle of next year. Now, the timeline as regards to the distributed access through renewable energy scale-up, which I mentioned, the biggest intervention, electrification intervention in second to only India, it's going to be a 3-year plan, which we have started. We have identified 40 interconnected mini grids across the 7 distribution franchise area. This project would definitely be delivered by the end of next year as well. The entire electrification of the 17.5 million ambitious project of this present government is also intended to be completed before the end of this dispensation. We also intend to complete the entire development of the National Electrification Strategy and Implementation Plan before the end of next year. This is a target given to us by the Honorable Minister of Power. So these are the key timelines of some of these initiatives that we are undertaking.
And we would be happy to have you in again to evaluate all of this, just like I told my first guest, so that we are monitoring and Nigerians are getting value for money. I must thank you so much. Interesting conversation, I must say, this Monday afternoon. Mr. Abba Aliyu, live from our Abuja studios, Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer of the Rural Electrification Agency. Thank you so much. I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
All right, then. Well, interesting conversations today, if you agree with me. But it's time to move to markets. And Mr. Jami Mohammed is already standing by via Zoom.